In the small village of Aganlu, nestled between red earth paths and aging iroko trees, fear lived as quietly as the wind. It whispered through cracked walls and lingered in the eyes of the people. At the center of that fear was a woman named Zainab. She was not loud, she did not argue. She greeted elders with respect and children with gentle smiles. Yet wherever she passed, conversation stopped. Doors closed softly behind her. Mothers pulled their children closer. Zainab had lived in Aganlu since she could remember. No one knew where she came from. She herself remembered nothing beyond fragments. Firelight, a woman screaming her name, the sound of horses in the distance. She survived by selling herbs, helping women give birth, and tending to the sick. Ironically, despite her kindness, calamity seemed to follow her presence. When the rains delayed, villagers muttered her name. When a child fell ill, eyes turned toward her hut. When crops withered unexpectedly, fear hardened into belief. The elders met often beneath the old baobab tree, their voices low and urgent. She brings misfortune, one would say. The ancestors are angry, another replied. No one spoke in her defense. Fear is louder than truth, and in Aganlu, fear had found its scapegoat. Zainab felt it all. She felt the weight of their stares and the silence that followed her footsteps. At night, she cried quietly so the village would not hear. She prayed to a god she barely understood, and to ancestors she had never known. All she wanted was peace, to belong somewhere without being hunted by whispers. But Aganlu had already decided her fate. The year the great drought came was the year fear turned into hatred. The river shrank to a thin, muddy line, and the earth cracked beneath the sun. Farmers watched helplessly as their crops died one by one. Desperation pushed reason aside. The elders searched for answers, not in the soil, but in the shadows of superstition. The whispers grew louder. Women refused to buy Zainab's herbs. Children were warned never to speak to her. One evening, a goat was found dead near her hut, its eyes wide and unblinking. It became proof enough. The spirits have spoken, the villagers said. Zainab tried to defend herself, but words failed her. How does one argue against fear rooted in belief? She retreated further into silence, spending her days alone and her nights restless. Strange dreams began to visit her. Visions of a grand palace, gold-adorned pillars, and a woman with a crown pressing a mark into her wrist while crying. She woke each time with her heart pounding, her wrist burning as if touched by fire. The elders finally made their decision. Under the cover of night, they gathered torches and drums, not to celebrate, but to purge. They told themselves it was necessary, that Aganlu would never know peace until Zainab was gone. And so the village prepared to cast out the woman they feared most.
The night Zainab was driven away, the moon hid behind thick clouds. Torches lit the path as villagers surrounded her hut. She opened the door to angry faces and trembling hands gripping sticks and charms. No accusations were spoken aloud. None were needed. "Leave," an elder commanded.
Zainab, you must leave now. This is no longer your place.
Before dawn, Zainab did not scream. She did not beg. She simply nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion and sorrow. She was given no food, no water, not even a cloth. The forest awaited her, dark, deep, and unforgiving. As she walked away from Aganlu, tears blurred her vision. Every step felt like a farewell to hope. The forest swallowed her whole, its sounds unfamiliar and threatening. She collapsed beneath a tree, hugging her knees, wondering if death would come before morning. Yet, as the night deepened, something strange happened. The forest grew quiet, the wind softened, and Zainab felt protected, watched, as though unseen eyes guarded her sleep. For the first time in years, she slept without fear.
At dawn, the sound of hooves shattered the silence. Zainab woke in panic, thinking the villagers had come to finish her fate. But what she saw made her breath catch. Men in royal armor emerged from the mist. Their horses were tall and strong, their presence commanding. These were not villagers, these were royal guards. They surrounded her cautiously. Their leader, a tall man with stern eyes, stepped forward. His gaze fell upon Zainab and then froze. Her wrist. Slowly, he knelt. The other guards followed, confusion written across their faces. Zainab stared in disbelief as the leader pointed to a faint mark on her wrist, one she had always thought a birthmark. An ancient royal symbol, one that had vanished 18 years ago.
The leader's voice trembled as he spoke. "This cannot be." Zainab looked down at her wrist, her mind racing. Memories flooded back. Fire, screams, a woman pressing her hand hard against her skin. The symbol burned faintly, glowing as if awakened. The guards whispered among themselves. Some crossed themselves, others bowed their heads. None dared speak the truth aloud. The forest seemed to hold its breath. "Who are you?" Zainab asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The leader stood slowly. His eyes were filled with awe and fear. "You are not who you think you are," he said, "and Aganlu has made a terrible mistake."
The guards did not explain much that morning. They offered Zainab water, food, and a cloak woven with royal colors. Still dazed, she followed them as they led her out of the forest. Each step felt unreal, as though she were walking out of one life and into another she did not yet understand. The leader, who finally introduced himself as Captain Bashiru, rode beside her in silence, his eyes occasionally flicking toward her wrist as though afraid the mark might disappear. As they traveled, Zainab learned fragments of the truth. 18 years ago, the kingdom of Zaranda had lost its infant princess during a violent palace coup. The royal family was nearly wiped out. The queen escaped with her child, but somewhere in the chaos, the baby vanished. Only one thing remained as proof of her survival: a sacred mark placed on every royal child at birth, known only to the palace elders and royal guards. Zainab listened, her heart pounding. She wanted to deny it, to laugh at the absurdity of the story. She was a village woman, a healer, a caste outcast, not royalty. And yet, the dreams, the mark, the unexplainable protection she had always felt, it all began to form a frightening picture. That night by the campfire, Zainab dreamed again. This time, the vision was clearer. She saw a palace bathed in fire, heard her mother's voice crying her name, felt strong hands lifting her away. When she woke, tears streamed freely down her face. For the first time, she wondered if her suffering had not been a curse, but a path.
Zaranda rose from the horizon like a dream carved in stone. Tall walls, golden banners, and the hum of a living city greeted Zainab as they approached. Yet, despite its beauty, unease crept into her heart. The guards moved cautiously, avoiding main gates and crowded paths. Captain Bashiru warned her softly, "Not everyone will welcome your return." Inside the palace, whispers traveled faster than footsteps. Servants stared. Elders paused mid-conversation. Some faces reflected disbelief, others showed fear, thinly veiled behind politeness. Zainab was taken to a private chamber far from the royal wing. It was comfortable, but it felt like a cage. That night, palace elders gathered in secret. Arguments filled the room. Some demanded proof. Others insisted the mark was sacred and unquestionable. A few voices, colder than the rest, warned that if Zainab truly was the lost princess, her return could threaten those who had grown powerful in her absence. Unaware of the full danger, Zainab sat alone, staring at her reflection. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where she was not feared, not chased, not alone. But hope frightened her more than despair ever had, because hope could be taken away.
Tradition demanded proof beyond symbols and stories. At dawn, Zainab was summoned to the Hall of Ancestors, a place few commoners ever entered. The air was heavy with incense and history. Ancient relics lined the walls, each one whispering of power and sacrifice. The elders explained the ritual. Royal blood, they believed, would awaken the ancestral altar. Zainab's hands trembled as a small blade cut her palm. Her blood fell onto the stone floor. The ground reacted. A low hum echoed through the hall. The carvings glowed faintly. Some elders stepped back in shock. Others fell to their knees. There was no longer doubt. "She is royal," one elder whispered. But confirmation brought danger. That same night, a servant warned Zainab in hushed tones, "There are those who do not want you alive." The palace, once a symbol of safety, revealed its teeth. Power does not always announce itself with noise. In Zaranda, it moved softly, through silk robes, polite smiles, and carefully chosen words. Once the truth of Zainab's blood spread through the palace, admiration and fear followed her like shadows. Some bowed lower than before, others watched her too closely. Zainab felt it in the air. Her presence had disturbed a balance long settled. Among those unsettled was Lady Morayo, a woman of grace and sharp intelligence. She had ruled the inner court for years, advising kings and shaping alliances. Her son, Prince Adekunle, had been raised as the future of Zaranda since the disappearance of the royal line. To many, his claim was already accepted. Zainab's return was not a miracle to them, it was a threat. Morayo never confronted Zainab directly. Instead, danger crept in quietly. A cup of tea left untouched because Zainab sensed something bitter. A loose step on a palace stair that Captain Bashiru noticed just in time. A servant who warned her in a trembling whisper, "My lady, someone wants you gone." Each attempt chipped away at Zainab's fragile sense of safety. The palace that glittered by day became a maze of fear by night. She slept lightly, listening for footsteps. The forest exile she once feared now felt almost peaceful compared to this beautiful cage. Yet, something unexpected happened. Fear no longer weakened her, it sharpened her. Zainab began to observe, to listen, to remember. She noticed how Lady Morayo's eyes never softened, how certain words were always nearby when trouble followed. Patterns emerged, and with them, resolve. "I survived abandonment," Zainab told Captain Bashiru one night. "I survived hatred. I will survive this too." For the first time, she understood that royalty was not just a title, it was endurance. The council chamber was filled to capacity the day Zainab chose to speak. Elders, nobles, military leaders, and palace women gathered beneath the high carved ceiling. Many expected her to remain silent, obedient, grateful for protection. That was the version of her they preferred. Instead, Zainab stood tall. She spoke of Aganlu, the hunger, the whispers, the exile. She spoke of being called cursed, of surviving without family or protection. Her voice did not shake. Each word landed with quiet force. "If I were truly a curse," she said, "I would not still be standing." Some elders lowered their eyes. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Lady Morayo watched closely, her expression unreadable. Zainab then revealed her vision, not of revenge, but of justice. She spoke of unity between palace and village, of healing fear with truth. Her words stirred something long forgotten in Zaranda, hope rooted in humility. When she finished, the chamber was silent. An elder finally rose. "You speak like a ruler," he said slowly. Zainab met his gaze. "I speak like someone who has nothing left to lose." That day, alliances shifted. Some pledged loyalty. Others quietly withdrew, choosing patience over confrontation. Lady Morayo smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Zainab returned to her chambers knowing one truth. Her greatest danger was yet to come, but so was her strength. After her address to the council, Zainab noticed a shift in how the palace breathed around her. Doors closed more quietly. Conversation stopped when she entered a room. Loyalty was no longer assumed, it was weighed. While some servants now bowed with genuine respect, others avoided her gaze entirely, as though afraid of being seen choosing a side. Captain Bashiru doubled the guard around her chambers, but even he could not guard against whispers. Rumors spread like smoke, that Zainab practiced forbidden magic, that her survival was unnatural, that her return would bring war. Each lie was carefully planted, watered by fear and ambition. Zainab learned that truth alone was never enough. It had to be defended. That night, she was awakened by a soft knock. An elderly palace maid slipped inside, her hands shaking. "My Hidi," she whispered, "they meet tonight. Lady Morayo and the councilmen who fear you." Zainab's heart raced, but she did not panic. Instead, she felt a strange calm settle over her. For the first time, she understood the rules of this new world. Silence was no longer safety. Action was. She asked Bashiru to bring her trusted allies, few but loyal. Together, they listened from hidden corridors as plans were made to accuse Zainab publicly, to strip her of protection and quietly end her claim. Treason wore the mask of tradition. When Zainab returned to her chamber before dawn, she knew one truth with certainty. The palace was no longer just testing her blood, it was testing her will. The following day, the council convened under the guise of unity. Smiles were exchanged, formal greetings echoed. But beneath the polished words, betrayal sharpened its blade. Lady Morayo spoke eloquently, suggesting that Zainab's presence had unsettled the kingdom and that further investigation was needed for peace. Zainab felt the trap closing. Before the elders could vote, chaos erupted. A guard collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Poison. Screams followed. Accusations flew instantly toward Zainab, just as planned. But fate intervened again. A young nobleman stepped forward, confessing. He revealed Morayo's plot, his voice cracking under guilt. Documents were produced, names spoken aloud. The chamber erupted into fury. Lady Morayo did not beg. She stood cold and proud, declaring that Zaranda needed strength, not a girl raised in exile. Her son was dragged away in chains, screaming in disbelief. That day, blood was not spilled, but trust was. The night after Lady Morayo's fall was the quietest Zainab had known since arriving at the palace. No whispers followed her footsteps. No hidden eyes watched from behind curtains. Yet the silence felt heavier than noise. It pressed against her chest as she sat alone in her chamber, staring at the crown laid carefully on a low wooden table. Gold and ivory gleamed softly under the oil lamps. But to Zainab, it looked less like a reward and more like a burden waiting to be lifted. For years, she had survived by adapting, learning when to speak, when to disappear, when to endure. Now, for the first time, she was being asked to lead. The elders spoke confidently of destiny and bloodlines, but Zainab knew the truth of herself. She had been shaped by hunger, rejection, and loneliness. She feared that those wounds might make her unfit to rule, that pain might harden her heart where compassion was required. Sleep did not come easily. Instead, memories returned of Aganlu's dusty paths, of children who once fell ill near her, of elders who cast her out without mercy. She wondered if the people of Zaranda would one day look at her with the same fear. Power, she realized, could turn love into suspicion just as easily as curses once had. Before dawn, Zainab made a decision that surprised even Captain Bashiru. Disguised in plain clothing, she left the palace quietly and returned to Aganlu. There she walked among the people who knew her not as royalty, but as the woman they once rejected. Some stared in shock, others bowed instinctively, a few wept. Zainab spoke to them gently. She healed the sick again, shared meals, and listened without judgment. She did not demand forgiveness, nor did she deny the pain they caused. In Aganlu, she remembered who she was beneath titles. By the time she returned to Zaranda, her heart was steady. She was ready to choose the crown, not because of blood, but because of purpose.
The coronation of Zaranda had been planned many times in the past, but never like this. Zainab rejected isolation and grandeur meant to separate ruler from people. She ordered the palace gates opened wide, allowing villagers, traders, healers, and farmers to stand alongside nobles and elders. The city filled with drums, songs, and prayers that rose like smoke into the sky. As Zainab walked toward the ancestral platform, she wore no excessive jewels. Her robe was simple, embroidered with symbols of unity rather than conquest. When she raised her arm to swear the ancient oath, the sacred mark on her wrist shimmered faintly, drawing gasps from the elders. It was as though the ancestors themselves were watching. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the courtyard. I was lost, but not forgotten. I was broken, but not destroyed. I do not stand before you as a miracle, but as proof that suffering does not erase destiny. The crown was placed upon her head, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Zainab felt the weight settle, not crushing, but grounding. When she turned to face the people, they bowed, not in fear, but in recognition. Queen Zainab of Zaranda had risen.
Years passed. Zaranda flourished, not as an empire of fear, but as a kingdom of balance. Trade returned. Children laughed freely. Stories replaced scars. Zainab ruled with firmness and compassion, never forgetting the forest, the exile, the nights of tears. She did not erase the past. She honored it. Under her reign, laws were shaped to protect the forgotten, ensuring no child would vanish into silence as she once had. When elders asked how she wished to be remembered, Zainab smiled softly. Not as a queen, she said, but as a woman who endured and chose to stand. Long after her time, stories would be told of a woman once called cursed.
chased into the forest, only to return as a ruler who reshaped destiny itself. And in Zaranda, whenever storms passed and dawn broke clear, the people remembered. Some are not lost. They are hidden until the world is ready.
Zainab's story teaches us that what the world calls a curse is often a destiny waiting to be revealed. Rejection, pain, and suffering do not destroy purpose, but prepare it. And true leadership is born from compassion, endurance, and understanding rather than power or titles. So if this story touched you, if you've ever felt misunderstood, rejected, or pushed into your own forest, remember that your story is not over. It is unfolding. Subscribe for more powerful African stories. Share this with someone who needs hope. And comment, hidden, not cursed, because the next story might be yours.